120 miles from the nearest shore, in the black water of the North Sea, a man stands at the edge of a burning platform and does the only thing left to do. He jumps 100 feet down into a sea that is itself on fire. Behind him, the largest oil platform in the world is tearing itself apart. On the night of the 6th of July, 1988, this was not the worst choice a man could make on Piper Alpha. The worst choice was to do exactly what the rules told him to do. It had been an ordinary evening. Men were coming off shift, watching television in the living quarters, writing letters home. The sea was calm, the weather clear. There was no storm, no warning, nothing at all to suggest that within a single hour, most of the 226 men on board would be dead. Piper Alpha was a giant, one of the most productive oil platforms in the world, a steel island the size of a small town, holding 226 men above the freezing North Sea. It had been built for oil, but its owners had rebuilt it to pump high-pressure gas as well, and wired it by pipeline to the platforms all around it. It earned a fortune. It also meant that a fire on Piper Alpha could now be fed, without limit, by every platform it was joined to. No one standing on its deck could see that trap. They were about to fall straight into it. To move that gas, the platform relied on two condensate pumps, twins known simply as Pump A and Pump B. That day, Pump A had been taken out of service for maintenance, and one of its critical safety valves had been removed, leaving nothing but a temporary metal disc bolted loosely in its place. It was never meant to hold back pressure. And the single sheet of paper that recorded this, the warning that Pump A must not be started, had been filed in the wrong place and never reached the men who would need it most. Pump B kept running and the platform ran on. Then, at 9:45 at night, Pump B suddenly stopped. Without it, the gas would back up and the whole platform's production would grind to a halt within minutes. So the men in the control room did the logical thing, the only thing that seemed open to them. They reached for the other pump. They restarted Pump A, the one with the missing valve, the one no one had told them was unsafe, and behind that loose metal disc, under enormous pressure, the gas began to escape. At around 10 o'clock, gas escaped through that loose cover and filled the compressor module. It needed only a spark. The first explosion tore through the heart of the platform, blew apart walls that were never designed to contain a blast, and ruptured an oil line. In a single instant, Piper Alpha was on fire, and the control room, the one place that could have coordinated any response, was already destroyed. From this moment, a clock was running, not on any wall but inside the pipes, because the fire was now heating the very lines that carried oil and gas beneath the sea, and it was only a question of time before one of them gave way. On the horizon, two other platforms, Tartan and Claymore, could see Piper Alpha burning. They were pumping oil and gas directly into it through the shared pipelines. And yet, for a crucial hour, they did not stop. Their managers were waiting for permission from the shore, unwilling to halt production on their own authority. So the fuel kept flowing, and the fire kept growing. On Piper Alpha itself, there was a system built for exactly this moment, powerful pumps that could flood the platform with seawater, but they had been switched to manual so that divers working below would not be pulled into the intakes. Now, in the fire and the chaos, no one could reach them. Not a single drop of water from the platform's own system ever touched the flames. As the smoke rolled in, most of the men did exactly what they had been trained to do. They made their way to the accommodation block, the living quarters, to wait for rescue. It was the mustering point. It was the safe place. It was where every rule told them to go. But the accommodation block had no defense against smoke, and no clear escape through the fire that now surrounded it. Inside, in the darkness and the rising heat, more than 80 men waited for a rescue that could never reach them. A smaller number made a different choice. They ignored the instructions, climbed down through the smoke to the lowest points they could reach, and looked at the sea, 60, 70, 100 feet below, burning in patches with spilled oil. And they jumped. It broke every rule they had been given. It was, for almost all of them, the only reason they are alive today. 20 minutes after the first explosion, the clock inside the pipes ran out. The great gas line running to Tartan ruptured, releasing gas at a rate of tons every second. The fireball that followed was seen more than 50 miles away. Piper Alpha was no longer a platform on fire. It had become a blowtorch the size of a building. Rescue boats and ships pushed in through the heat, dragging men out of the water. Then, around 50 minutes in, a second great gas line gave way. The blast swept across the sea and over one of the fast rescue craft, killing its crew and the survivors they had only just pulled from the water. Even the rescue had turned deadly. By now, the steel itself was failing. The heat softened the great legs and beams until the structure could no longer carry its own weight. One by one, the modules slid into the sea. And then the accommodation block, with the men still inside it, broke away and dropped into the water. A little before 1 in the morning, most of Piper Alpha was gone. Of the 226 people on board, 167 were killed. 30 of them were never found. Most did not die from the blast or the flames. They died from smoke, waiting where they had been told to wait. 61 men survived, and almost every one of them lived because, at the worst moment of their lives, they broke the rules. The inquiry that followed, led by a Scottish judge named William Cullen, lasted more than a year and delivered 106 recommendations. It found no single villain. Instead, it found a whole system in which safety had been allowed to slip beneath the pressure to produce, paperwork that hid a missing valve, a refuge that was really a trap, neighbors who would not shut down, and pumps that no one could start. Almost every one of those recommendations was written into law. Today, every offshore worker in the North Sea is trained on the lessons that were written in the fire of that night. The rules changed because 226 men went to work on an ordinary summer evening, and only 61 of them came home. Piper Alpha is gone. What it taught the world has outlived it, bought at a price that no one should ever have had to pay.